Hi everyone, thank you very much for stopping by and returning to the old world. At the time of recording, I've just got home, having been to Salute 52, hosted by the South London Warlords. It's been a great day out, and the first one of these I've been able to attend for a number of years, so I thought I'd talk about it. So firstly, what is Salute? Well, Salute is a wargame show. It packs in loads and loads of games, participation and demonstration, and also has loads of stores for various producers. It has a reputation of being the largest event of this type in the United Kingdom. And I could well believe that. There were thousands of people in attendance. Now, Salute back in the day used to have a bring and buy sale. That is now long gone. To be honest, I don't blame them. It took up a large amount of space in the Excel, which is the large arena hall that the event takes place in. And it's definitely space which could be better used for other kinds of stalls, but also just to give people a little bit more space to move around. It has been very, very busy. And this year, despite there being a little bit more space, I think, between some of the stalls, there were some of the lanes between the various things going on. This in particular around where Wayland Games were based, it was actually really difficult to move through. There were just so many people. That aside, what was my experience of the day? Well, I got there a couple of minutes before 10 o'clock, which was the official opening time of the event. And for UK-based viewers, you'll know what I mean when I say I went very much through a post office queuing system gone large. There were an awful lot of people going in, but everything seemed to run pretty smoothly. On entering the hall, I immediately moved to the back of the space. Why? Well, obviously the things nearest to the entrance door were absolutely rammed. And actually, across the course of the day, quite a few of the stands were consistently hugely busy. As an aside, it was quite interesting that by the time I left, about 4 hours later, the queue for the Burrows and Badgers stall was absolutely immense, and it actually reminded me a little bit of when Forge World used to have a stand there a number of years ago, and actually used to cause problems for a lot of other stores because it had such a large queue. The same, I think, was true of Burrows and Badgers today. The event was a little bit different from how I remember it. How so? Well, previously when I've been, there's been a massive input of historical wargaming. Lots of variety within that sort of space. This year there was an awful lot of sci-fi, an awful lot of fantasy, to an extent that I hadn't really expected. I did actually bump into someone I used to be a member of the same club of when I lived in a different city, and they were also of very much the same opinion. It had been a number of years since that person had been, and they were saying there's an awful lot of dark fantasy this year, and that's not what I remember. But I suppose whilst you would expect me to be happy about that, being principally a Warhammer player, I did hope to see just a little bit more variety. But I suppose with the rise of fantasy and sci-fi gaming, if that's more of the current trend, then obviously that's the kind of thing that people are going to bring to try and sell. Over the course of the day, I managed to get a modest but useful haul of goodies, picking up an interesting book for the English Civil War. Not something I'm actively involved in, but I do like getting these sort of historical books that are actually really difficult to find outside of these sort of shows. The military history, very much specialist pieces. You're not going to get them on the shelves of your standard bookshop, but you are going to find them at places like Salute, Hammerhead, and other such events that happen around the country, and of course in different countries around the world as well. So it's a good opportunity to get hold of things and just gain knowledge, really, that would be difficult to find otherwise. So I got that book. I got a rule book for Oathmark, hoping to get some additional campaign ideas which I can bring into my own sort of narrative style if I ever actually get around to doing something with that. Some bases, some paintbrushes, so, standard sort of things. But I've also picked up a box of the Grenards from Wargames Atlantic. On the subject of Wargames Atlantic, I did have a look at the models that are coming out fairly soon in relation to the new edition of Baron's War. Now, they weren't doing proper playthroughs of the new game, which was, I think, a little bit of a shame, but the models did look absolutely awesome, and I think they definitely fit in with Warhammer players, probably most obviously for the forces of Bretonnia. I do like Wargames Atlantic stuff, so say I picked up the Grenard Infantry box set. That is to go into my fledgling Warhammer 40,000 Imperial Guard force, and I might do a few videos on that in the future. When it came to the games to participate in, I had a look at Future War Commander. I didn't actually play this game, but I did have a bit of a chat with one of the people running the game. There's a new version of this game coming out fairly soon, and it's by Pendraken Miniatures. They tend to do stuff in fairly small scale. I was told the rule set is not dissimilar to the old War Master rules when it comes to command and control, which I thought quite interesting, where you take a test, you issue some orders until you fail, and then your turn effectively ends. Could be quite interesting. It might be something that I have a look at. I managed to bag a sample set of infantry figures for the Human Free States. Might have a look at them. It certainly might give me a new direction to go in, albeit I've struggled in the past with small scale stuff. So again, watch this space, you never know, I might find it interesting. But I should say, if you're interested in any of this sort of stuff, or something a bit different from the usual Warhammer staple, do shout, and you never know, I might be able to put something together. The other game I particularly wanted to mention was the Burrows and Badgers / Judge Dredd, which was by Magrathea, Builder of Worlds. I had a bit of a playthrough with one of the gang of the Judge Dredd rules. Fairly simple. It was quite good fun, but mostly it enabled me to really get a close-up look at the models of someone I do watch on YouTube. I'd really, really enjoy his stuff, so wanted to give that particular shout out, and I think it did get an award on the day for being the best fantasy / sci-fi game. So congratulations, Magrathea, Builder of Worlds, and of course, team. Final thing for me to note, it's not something I took part in, but it is something that has changed over recent years with Salute, is they now have a space in the middle of the hall which is dedicated to talks, people talking about various things. So there was one today around big battles using small scales. There was one about using elite units, along with a couple of other talks. Didn't go to any of those, and I know they've done some things, I think, in previous years, such as women in wargaming and stuff like that. So really, there's a little bit for an awful lot of people. It was a great day out, and apart from a couple of the aisles which they bordered on perhaps the more popular stores like Element Games, Whaling Games, which are some of the really, really big boys in the wargaming scene when it comes to selling stuff. Overall, apart from those aisles, as I say, it felt pretty manageable in the crowds. It was busy. It was a little bit difficult at times to get to the front of stores to be able to see what they'd actually got. But overall, I don't think it was unmanageable. The space is pretty good. The location is easier than it used to be to get to. So it used to be accessible only by the Docklands like railway in London. Now it also has a connection to the new Elizabeth line, which means you don't need to faff about quite so much with your travel. I used to get there years ago, having to get the underground, then change to the DLR. It was always packed. It was always challenging. Now I didn't have to do that. I managed to hook up straight to the Elizabeth line, and then it was a straight shot across London. So that was pretty convenient. So there you have it, my initial real thoughts of all things of Salute, running in its 52nd year. So a massively long running program. I'm looking forward to next year. Hopefully it's going to have an interesting theme. It was Highlanders this year, so there was bagpipe music and Scottish stuff aplenty, not to mention a couple of reenactment groups. You had a Napoleonic Scottish regiment and a regiment from the Sealed Knot. I did say I was going to finish, but I'll give you one last aside because I did get to play briefly with one of the broadswords, which turns out is made by Armour Class. Had a nice conversation with those guys, being a HEMA bod myself and fencing primarily with the Highland broadsword. So I will wrap up this time. Genuinely, thank you very much for listening. If you've enjoyed this really ramble through my trip to Salute, do consider the usual like and subscription. It's a massive help to small channels such as this one. And if you are, by some miracle, watching Tim, really enjoyed your stuff at the Magrathare Builder of Worlds store. So thank you very much for that. So thank you for listening. I am Return to the Old World. Have a great day.